Chapter 1. On the day the company went public, my wife, Victoria Westwood, in a bid to secure a footing for her newly hired old flame, demanded I hand over the core antique appraisal team for him to manage. The moment she said it, my colleagues shot me mocking glances, waiting for me to fly into a rage. But I didn't get angry. I smiled. I even took the chief appraiser's ID from my chest and hung it around Ethan Jones's neck. "I'll do you one better," I said gently. "You can be the chief appraiser. You'll be famous overnight." But no one knew that among the batch of forgeries just delivered, there was a genuine antique, worth millions of dollars. And according to industry regulations, the chief appraiser, as the person in charge, was required to destroy all forgeries on site. When the time came, all compensation for the genuine antique Ethan Jones destroyed would fall on Victoria's company. She would also be blacklisted from the industry. "Ethan, you look so handsome in that suit, and you were brilliant on camera just now. The company wouldn't have gone public so quickly without you. You've been indispensable." I watched as my wife, Victoria Westwood, patted Ethan Jones's shoulder affectionately, standing on her tiptoes to adjust his tie. The colleagues around them chimed in with their own praise. Ethan's interview today was fantastic. I never knew someone so young could have such profound insights. A talent like Ethan is destined for great things in this industry. That's right. We're all counting on you and Miss Westwood to lead the company to new heights. The air in front of the office was filled with cheerful laughter, but to me the sound was grating. I clenched the necklace in my hand. Today was supposed to be the company's IPO celebration. Our field, antique appraisal, always draws a lot of attention. To promote the company's growth, we had invited the media for a press event. I had spent the last week carefully preparing my speech, even rehearsing it several times on the way to the office this morning. But as I pulled up to the entrance, Victoria told me she'd forgotten the matching necklace for her outfit. Seeing that we had time and wanting her to look her best for the cameras, I turned the car around without a second thought to go back and get it for her. It wasn't until I saw Ethan Jones standing in front of the cameras, reciting my speech, that I understood. The forgotten necklace was just an excuse. She had even given me the wrong time for the interview. It was all a setup to give Ethan enough time to memorize my script and take my place in front of the media to help him quickly establish himself in the industry. Ethan was busy seeing off the reporters when he seemed to spot me. He covered his mouth in a theatrical gesture of surprise. "Sincere, where have you been? We were just looking for you. The reporters said they had another engagement, so the interview was moved up. You're not mad at me for stealing your thunder, are you?" He lowered his head, feigning remorse, but the look he gave me was one of undisguised triumph. Ethan was just a rookie, but he was Victoria's first love. Relying on the fact that Victoria couldn't let him go and would always back him up, he was constantly and shamelessly provoking me. The moment Victoria saw me, her expression soured. "Sincere Clark, I can tolerate your usual tardiness, but how could you be late on a day this important? Day in and day out, you can't do anything right. It would be better to just hand the antique appraisal team over to Ethan to manage. That team needs to be in the public eye frequently. With you in charge, you're bound to screw things up sooner or later and cause trouble for me." The sun beat down relentlessly. But hearing Victoria's icy words, I felt a chill run through me. I remembered years ago when Victoria said she wanted to open an antique appraisal company. For her, I gave up a stable teaching position at the university. I scrimped and saved, poured every penny I had into her dream, and navigated the treacherous waters of this industry by her side. Without me, Victoria's abilities would have never brought her this level of success. All these years, I had poured my heart and soul into the company without a single complaint. And Ethan? He had run a few errands for a couple of days, and because Victoria couldn't bear to see him so exhausted, she promoted him ahead of schedule, breaking all protocol. Ethan always managed to effortlessly take credit for my achievements. In Victoria's eyes, my sacrifices were a joke, not even worth mentioning. Thinking about it now, Victoria was truly ruthless and two-faced. Today, she had finally worn away the last shred of affection between us. I let out a long breath and said flatly, "Fine, he can have it." A grin spread across Ethan's face, though he made a show of refusing. "Oh, I couldn't possibly. Chief, you're in charge of the core appraisal team. Every one of them is a top expert in the field. I'm just a newcomer. I don't think I have the experience. I just heard the appraisal department has been busy lately, and I wanted to help you out, Chief. I was worried you were overworked. Victoria rushed to reassure him. Ethan, you're professionally strong and incredibly talented. Besides, who in this industry doesn't start from the bottom? All you're missing is a chance to prove yourself. Hearing her words, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I knew for a fact that Ethan had been on the verge of failing every single class in college. If that counted as professionally strong, then anyone could be a titan of the industry. Victoria shot me a glare, her voice sharp with displeasure. Sincere, what are you laughing at? Don't push your luck. You're not as good as Ethan, to begin with. You should be grateful I haven't fired you. Try to learn from him for a change. Stop causing me problems all day. I looked at her, my face cold, and she seemed like a stranger. Perhaps she had forgotten how she used to consult me on every single company matter, how she used to rely on me for everything. Now that the company was on the right track, she wanted to kick me to the curb. Victoria continued to drone on, her words dripping with condescension. I felt my ears growing numb. Taking a deep breath, I walked towards Ethan, ignoring the gossiping stares of our colleagues. The moment I raised my hand, even Victoria tensed up, thinking I was about to slap him, but I simply unclipped the ID from my chest and stopped in front of him. I hung the ID card around Ethan's neck. For a talent like you, I said gently, just managing the team isn't enough. I'm making you the chief appraiser. You'll be famous overnight, Chapter 2. At my words, every colleague present froze. They turned to look at me in disbelief as if I'd been possessed. After all, everyone knew how much blood and sweat I had poured into reaching the position of chief appraiser. I had even personally trained the entire appraisal team. Victoria stared at the ID card around Ethan's neck, her voice suddenly dropping. Sincere Clark, what is the meaning of this? Strange. I could have sworn I heard a trace of displeasure in her tone. I was letting Ethan get a massive, unearned promotion. Shouldn't she be happy? Paving the way for Ethan, removing every obstacle for him, wasn't that what she wanted most? Ethan took off the ID and held it out to me with a theatrical display of reluctance. Chief, are you doing this because you're angry? Giving me the chief's position? Please don't misunderstand. Vicky just wanted me to help you out for the good of the company, and I absolutely have no intention of replacing you. I can't take this. He spoke with humility, but his eyes never left the ID card in his hand. It was obvious he had no intention of giving it back, terrified I might snatch it away. I smiled benevolently and pushed his hand back. Nonsense. Why would I be angry? You wanted a chance to prove yourself, didn't you? I'm giving you that chance. Victoria gave me a suspicious look, but my face showed no sign of resentment, so she could only purse her lips and say, Ethan, just take it. It's rare for him to be so generous. At that, Ethan quickly slung the ID back around his neck and offered me a few words of feigned gratitude. He cleared his throat and said casually, Vicky, that batch of forgeries that just came in, they're scheduled to be destroyed on this afternoon's program, right? If I remember correctly, only the chief appraiser can participate in that show. The guest was supposed to be the chief. But now that he's given the position to me, what are we going to do? I smiled to myself. I knew what Ethan was getting at. He wanted to take my place on the program, to have the industry acknowledge his new status as chief, and to seize this chance for fame. But no one knew that hidden among those forgeries was a genuine antique worth millions. Many had overlooked it, but I had identified it. My original plan was to reveal my findings on the program, which would have brought even greater prestige to our company. But now, I had changed my mind. As the person in charge, the chief appraiser is responsible for destroying forgeries to maintain the integrity of the antiques market. Once Ethan destroyed a genuine piece, however, it would be a completely different story. The penalty for each destroyed artifact was 10 times its value. Victoria could look forward to going bankrupt, prompted by Ethan's reminder. Victoria shot me a dismissive glance. Since the position of chief has changed, the guest on the program should naturally be changed to Ethan. I waved a hand nonchalantly, indicating I had no objections. Seeing that I had fallen silent and had even given up my position, Victoria seemed to feel a pang of guilt. She cleared her throat and said awkwardly, Don't be discouraged. As long as you assist Ethan properly, there will still be a place for you in this company. After Ethan finishes filming, there's a company dinner tonight. You should come too. Victoria lifted her chin, as if she were bestowing some great honor upon me. She was always like that. A slap in the face, followed by a piece of candy. In the past, my schedule at the company was always packed to the brim. I never had time for things like company dinners. I had long since had enough of this disgusting charity. I let out a short, sharp laugh and looked at Victoria coldly. "I'm sorry, but it seems you haven't quite grasped the situation. I've already quit Chapter 3. Victoria stared at me, her eyes widening. After a long moment, she pointed a finger at me, her voice trembling with rage. "Sincere Clark, what is that attitude? How dare you speak to me like that? I couldn't be bothered to even look at her." I turned and walked away. I could hear her shouting behind me, but I pretended not to hear. I walked along the street, trying to clear my head and calm myself down. Without realizing it, I had wandered into the local museum. Behind the clear glass of a display case, a sky-blue roux-ware porcelain vessel sat quietly. For a moment, I was lost in a daze, my memory pulling me far away. It brought me back to the first time I met Victoria. Years ago, my professor had me working on a restoration project. I hit a snag on a particularly difficult detail and was plunged into self-doubt. My family had never supported my decision to study such an obscure major. I was overwhelmed by a profound sense of helplessness, feeling utterly useless. That was when I met Victoria. She stood outside the university's restoration lab watching for a long time before finally mustering the courage to speak to me. She told me she had noticed me since the first day of school, that I had always been her role model, and she begged me not to give up. Looking at the blushing girl before me, I managed a small, weary smile. Not everyone is cut out for this line of work. Sometimes, you just have to accept your own mediocrity. I've always been a realist, never one for idealistic fantasies. Just as I was about to turn and leave, Victoria grabbed my arm, her voice firm. "But you were the one who said that it's through our appraisal and restoration that artifacts buried in the dust of history are brought back to life. Just like this roux-ware piece you're restoring. The sky blue color that Emperor Huizong of Song could only dream of was actually fired in a kiln. I know you have the skill to complete this piece," her words struck me. I looked at the unfinished work and was overcome with emotion. Where the clouds break after the rain, a sky blue hue appears. Such a color shall define the future. The artifacts couldn't speak for themselves. The meaning of our work was to speak for them, to convey the warmth of history. With Victoria's encouragement, I regained my confidence. After tireless effort, I finally completed the incredibly difficult restoration, and because of that, we became the closest of friends. As we spent more time together day after day, I fell in love with her. But just as I was preparing to confess my feelings, Ethan Jones beat me to it. Watching them together, so happy, I could only quietly bury my emotions. As it turned out, Ethan was never serious about her, he was just playing around. After latching onto a wealthy woman, he dumped Victoria, complaining about her family's modest background. The blow was so devastating that Victoria contemplated suicide. Luckily, I was there to save her. I stayed by her side, helping her forget the past, and slowly she began to heal. After we got together, she promised me that she would only love me for the rest of her life. The company I helped her build was flourishing, and I thought we would spend the rest of our lives together. That is, until Ethan, whose career had tanked, came looking for her again. And Victoria wavered. Not only did she easily forgive the pain he had caused her, but she also allowed him to bypass the hiring process and join her company. This was a direct violation of the strict rules she herself had established for new hires. But for Ethan, she was willing to make exception after exception. Thinking about it now, I sighed deeply. Perhaps I should have understood long ago. Victoria had never truly let go of Ethan Jones. She had never cleared out a space for me in her heart. It was too crowded, and now I didn't want it anymore. Just as I was about to leave, I suddenly heard Victoria's voice. "Sincere Clark, weren't you acting so high and mighty earlier? And yet here you are, waiting obediently for me at the recording location." I suddenly remembered that today's program was indeed being filmed in the museum's 5th-floor conference room. What rotten luck. Surely she wasn't conceited enough to think I was here because I couldn't let her go. Ethan chimed in. "Vicky, the chief always comes to personally inspect the venue before events like this. He's just thinking of the company's best interests. I'm sure he knows he was wrong about what happened earlier. You should just let it go," Victoria urged impatiently. "Fine. Since Ethan is speaking up for you, you can come along. You can hand Ethan a bottle of water when he needs it." I rolled my eyes at her, speechless. "You're overthinking things. I have no intention of going with you." I was about to leave when Ethan stepped forward and grabbed my hand solicitously. "Chief, don't say things you don't mean." Vicky was just joking. How could she possibly have you fetching water for me? Come on up to the 5th floor with us. You don't have an ID, you probably can't get in by yourself. With that, Ethan started pulling me towards the guest-only elevator. He ostentatiously fiddled with the ID on his chest and was about to press the button, but the staff member standing by the elevator stopped him. I'm sorry, sir, you are not authorized to use this elevator. Chapter 4. Ethan pointed to the 5 large words on his ID card and said indignantly, I'm the chief appraiser, can't you read? The staff member didn't humor him in the slightest, pointing at me instead. As far as I know, there is only one chief appraiser invited today, and that is Mr. Sincere Clark. For all I know, you could have stolen Mr. Clark's ID to cause trouble. Mr. Clark is signed under a team contract. If the chief appraiser has been changed, it must go through the proper channels. Victoria said impatiently, What channels? The staff member explained. Mr. Clark needs to sign a transfer agreement for the position of chief appraiser. At that time, all honors and powers belonging to the chief will be transferred to the successor. Ethan, of course, wanted all those benefits. He gritted his teeth and looked at me pleadingly. Chief, about this. Without a word, I nodded my consent on the spot. A staff member brought over the transfer agreement. I signed my name, but Ethan hesitated, his pen hovering over the paper. It says I also have to bear full responsibility for today's appraisal results? Victoria quickly leaned in and whispered in his ear. Don't worry, Ethan. This batch is all fake. I've already had someone check them. I put the real ones in storage long ago. All you have to do is smash the fakes. Hearing this, Ethan's confidence returned. He smiled and swiftly signed his name. He didn't forget to flaunt his newly legitimate position as chief, deliberately inviting me to come inside with them. Fine by me. I was also looking forward to Ethan's brilliant performance. So I went up to the 5th floor with the 2 of them. Once all the preparations were complete, Victoria squeezed Ethan's hand reassuringly. Ethan, don't be nervous. Just say a few words and then destroy all the forgeries. I'll be sitting in the audience. I'll be with you the whole time. Ethan gave Victoria a hug, then deliberately shot me a provocative look over her shoulder, trying to show off their special relationship. Honestly, it was childish. I completely ignored him. Ethan smoothed his hair and strode confidently onto the stage, the very picture of a successful man. He stood before the batch of forgeries, held a microphone, and began his impassioned speech. Distinguishing genuine from fake is the primary task of an antique appraiser, and it is the ultimate test of our professional ability. Hearing this, a reporter immediately asked, Master Jones, could you use one of these forgeries here to explain to us specifically how to appraise them? Being called Master Jones by a reporter went straight to Ethan's head. His grin stretched nearly from ear to ear. He put on a show of carefully examining the pieces, finally stopping in front of a genuine antique. Ethan bent down and, holding the genuine porcelain vase by its rim, casually lifted it. The sight made my stomach clench. Didn't he know you should never hold an antique like that? Especially not a genuine one, and I had to admit, Ethan was a special kind of talent. Out of all the fakes, he had managed to unerringly pick the one that was real. The next second, he declared shamelessly, a piece as obviously fake as this one. I can tell from its texture that it was made in the last 2 years. Some people try to pass off fakes as genuine to disrupt the antiques market. I will not allow this to happen, so today, I am going to destroy this most poorly crafted forgery. Making such a mistake in this setting was enough to ruin his reputation forever. But I couldn't just stand by and watch a precious antique be destroyed at his hands. That was a professional bottom line I had to uphold. I shot to my feet and shouted, Stop talking nonsense. The piece in your hands is clearly genuine. My outburst caused all the reporters to turn their cameras on me, and a murmur went through the audience. Wasn't that Sincere Clark who just objected? Clark has some weight in the industry. We can't just dismiss what he says. Shouldn't they reappraise this batch of antiques? Seeing the spotlight shift from Ethan to me, Victoria leaped to her feet, pointing at me and shouting, heedless of her image, Sincere Clark, are you insane? I can't believe you'd say something so ridiculous just to get attention. What kind of occasion is this for you to be making a scene? I was speechless. Victoria was as foolish as ever, completely unaware of the price she was about to pay for her actions. She still thought I was just jealous of Ethan and trying to steal his chance at fame. There were 3 genuine pieces on that stage. The one in Ethan's hand alone was conservatively valued at $30 million. Once he destroyed it, The tenfold penalty would fall on Victoria's company. The company had just gone public. With their current cash flow, they couldn't afford it even if they sold everything they owned. Moreover, a mistake of this magnitude would get them blacklisted from the entire industry. But since my well-intentioned warning had fallen on deaf ears, there was no longer any need for me to stop Ethan. I had just received news that the industry's most respected authority, Professor Peterson, would also be making an appearance on the show today. Professor Peterson was my university mentor. He had been in the appraisal industry for decades and had never made a mistake. If Professor Peterson declared the pieces genuine, Ethan and Victoria's careers in the industry would be over. And right now the professor was already on his way to the museum. As I was thinking, Ethan had already taken the appraisal hammer from a staff member. Without a moment's hesitation, he raised it high and brought it down on the porcelain vase. Chapter 5. Ethan's hammer fell swiftly, too fast for anyone to stop him. In the blink of an eye, there was a sharp crash. The exquisite porcelain vase shattered, its fragments scattering across the floor. After Ethan smashed the first vase, Victoria shot up from her seat again, whipping up the crowd's emotions. Yes, well done. We must resolutely boycott forgeries and clean up the antiques market. As soon as she finished speaking, the crowd grew excited, giving Ethan a thunderous round of applause. Cheers erupted one after another. Perhaps the atmosphere was too intoxicating. Ethan felt as if he were being lifted to the heavens. He became increasingly arrogant, giddy with his newfound importance. After smashing the first antique, Ethan had no intention of stopping. Professor Peterson hadn't arrived yet. It was too late. The remaining genuine pieces could not be destroyed. As the applause died down, I roared, "Ethan Jones, stop. Do you have any idea what you've done? That vase you just shattered is worth millions." Hearing my words, Ethan burst into arrogant laughter and sneered at me. "Sincere, you've been in the antique appraisal industry for so many years. How has your judgment gotten this bad? To prevent you from making more mistakes in the future, as a colleague, I'll give you a real education today." A sense of dread washed over me. There were still 2 genuine pieces among the remaining antiques. At that moment, I couldn't care about anything else. I prepared to rush the stage as fast as I could. But at that critical moment, Victoria stood up again to block my path. "Security, where's security? Get over here and restrain this man who's disrupting the event." In an instant, I was pinned down by security guards, unable to move. Victoria seized the opportunity to slander me, declaring, "Ladies and gentlemen, Sincere Clark was stripped of his position as chief appraiser due to his incompetence. He is clearly acting out of resentment, deliberately causing a scene at an event like this." The people in the audience began to murmur among themselves, their voices filled with indignation. "Sincere, this appraisal has major implications. Stop interfering with the program. Why bother talking to him? You can tell just by looking at him that he has serious character flaws. Sincere Clark, get out of the antique appraisal industry." Ethan was smug. He raised a hand, signaling for everyone to calm down. "Mistakes happen. I'm sure Sincere just had a lapse in judgment. Everyone, please be quiet. The program is still in progress." With that, Ethan once again raised his appraisal hammer. The sound of shattering porcelain echoed from the stage. To Ethan, it was like a beautiful piano concerto. A look of pure enjoyment spread across his face as he hammered the antiques with even more vigor. In less than 5 minutes, he had smashed every single piece on the stage. Watching the 3 genuine antiques being destroyed, my heart ached, but I was powerless to do anything. With the hammer still in his hand, Ethan found the camera, struck a pose, and gave the audience a bow like a trained dog. And with that, the live broadcast ended. Ethan walked off the stage with a humble expression. Victoria rushed up to meet him as if she were welcoming a triumphant hero. She grabbed his hand, her voice filled with joy. "Ethan, after Sincere caused that scene, the number of viewers in the live stream skyrocketed. Ethan, you've accidentally gone viral online. Everyone is calling you a hidden gem of an appraiser, handsome, skilled, and with great character." Ethan asked excitedly. "Really?" Victoria immediately opened her phone to show him the recording of the live broadcast. "Why would I lie to you? Of course it's true. See for yourself. A lot of people are even asking for your social media account. They want to be your fans." Then Victoria turned to me. "Sincere, I never knew you could be so malicious, slandering Ethan on an occasion like this. But you outsmarted yourself. Now the entire industry knows you're a disgrace to the profession." Ethan affectionately stroked Victoria's head, pretending to speak up for me while subtly putting me down. "All right, Vicky, I know you stand by what's right, not who you're related to. But I believe Ethan probably just has a poor eye for things. He didn't intentionally try to embarrass me. I had no time for either of them, nor the patience to watch their lovey-dovey display. I struggled with all my might against the security guards holding me back and roared, "The real disgraces are you two, Chapter 6. With that, I threw myself onto the stage. The fragments of genuine and fake antiques were mixed together, making them incredibly difficult to distinguish. I did my best, and with great difficulty, I managed to roughly locate the remains of the 3 genuine pieces. Victoria and Ethan walked onto the stage and looked at me with disdain. Victoria stood on a clean patch of the floor, wrinkling her nose. "Sincere Clark, don't you think you're overacting? The live broadcast ended a long time ago. Who are you putting on this show for?" Ethan's lips curled into a smirk. He ordered the logistics staff, "Someone get in here and clean this up. Throw everything on this stage away. I'd like to see any of you try at that critical moment." A deep elderly voice boomed from behind us. When I looked up, I saw my esteemed mentor, leaning on a cane, standing at the entrance of the conference room. The entire room erupted. "Isn't that Professor Peterson, the doyen of the industry? What is he doing here?" Professor Peterson has always been a private person. He never makes public appearances. The reporters who hadn't left yet scrambled to set up their equipment again, hastily restarting their live streams. Professor Peterson explained, "I saw the live broadcast on my phone today and noticed that there were indeed genuine pieces among this batch of antiques. I rushed over from the university, but it seems I was a step too late." Sincere clearly raised an objection. According to industry regulations, AR reappraisal is mandatory in such situations. "What you've done here is completely reckless." Professor Peterson's tone was grave. As a highly respected figure in the industry, his words carried immense weight. Hearing him, a flicker of guilt crossed Victoria's face, but she quickly masked it. She remained stubborn. "Professor Peterson, Sincere Clark is your student. Who's to say he didn't hire you to back him up? Besides, the genuine pieces are still at my company. How could they possibly have been mixed in with the fakes, as you claim?" Professor Peterson sighed in disappointment and demanded, "Where did you acquire this batch of antiques?" Victoria crossed her arms, unable to resist boasting. "A while ago, on West Street, some dealers were selling fakes and disrupting the market. I and my team exposed them. This batch of fakes is what I confiscated. Not only that, but I also acquired the genuine pieces they had." The museum director, who had been standing to the side, suddenly turned pale. He turned on Victoria and berated her. "Ms. Westwood, you are a fool. The dealers on West Street are cunning. They always hide genuine pieces among the fakes to avoid detection and smuggle them onto the black market for exorbitant prices." Victoria shook her head in panic, repeating, "No, that's impossible." The director ignored her and rushed over to support Professor Peterson, his voice earnest. "Professor Peterson, I knew you wouldn't be mistaken. Please, come up on stage and examine the pieces. See if there's any chance of salvaging them." Leaning on the director, Professor Peterson made his way over with some difficulty. When I saw my professor standing before me, frail and in his twilight years, I couldn't hold back my emotions any longer. My eyes reddened as I murmured, "Professor, I'm sorry." Professor Peterson patted my shoulder kindly, comforting me. "It's not your fault, Sincere. I know you did your best." With that, the professor took out his tools. After a careful examination, he confirmed that there had indeed been 3 genuine pieces on the stage. Victoria completely broke down. She swayed on her feet, and Ethan was no different. Sweat beaded on both of their faces. Chapter 7. The professor was old and couldn't stand for long. I also knew he disliked speaking on camera. I had someone help him to a seat to rest and arranged for others to secure the scene. After all, picking out the fragments of the genuine antiques from the jumbled mess was now a monumental task. In the meantime, the director decisively called the police to calculate the damages. It wasn't long before the officers arrived. One of them stood before Victoria and stated formally, "Miss Westwood, you are suspected of destroying cultural relics. According to the law, you are required to compensate for the damages caused. The calculated amount of compensation you owe is $500 million. "What? 500 million? Victoria panicked, unable to believe her ears. A debt of $500 million was a sum she simply couldn't produce. All the money had been invested in the company's development. She probably couldn't even scrape together $1 million right now. Ethan was frantic. He grabbed Victoria's wrist, pleading for help. "Vicky, what are we going to do? I was the one who smashed those antiques. It's all going to fall on the company. I can't possibly pay for it, but Vicky, I don't want to drag you down. You should just fire me." I could see Ethan was feigning retreat to gain Victoria's sympathy. Sure enough, Victoria looked at him with pity in her eyes and chided, "Ethan, what are you saying? How could I possibly abandon you at a time like this?" Victoria then turned to me, her tone instantly becoming imperious. "Sincere Clark, you were originally the guest for this program, so you should be the one responsible." Looking at her absurd behavior, I felt nauseated. I reminded her, "Victoria Westwood, don't forget, you two were the ones who signed the transfer agreement. It's all there in black and white. You can't deny it. I'm not a fool. Why should I pay for your actions?" Victoria stomped her foot in frustration and pointed at me threateningly. "I don't care. You have to pay this $500 million. If you don't agree, I'll divorce you." When I didn't answer immediately, Victoria thought I was caving again and raised her eyebrows smugly. After all, this wasn't the first time she had used divorce to threaten me. Nearly every major argument we had was because of Ethan, and every time she would threaten divorce. Back then, I loved her more than life itself, and the word divorce filled me with a sense of crisis. I was terrified she would actually leave me, so I had no choice but to back down every time, begging for her forgiveness. But Victoria was truly a fool. Didn't she understand that doing this would only push the person who loved her further and further away? Just like now, after she had wounded me so deeply, hearing those two words stirred nothing in me. In fact, it felt like a weight being lifted. This outcome was inevitable. My expression must have been grim because Victoria assumed I was hurt. She said haughtily, "It's not that I really want to divorce you. As long as you admit to the media that this was all your—" I cut her off bluntly. "Don't say another word. I agree to the divorce. There's a printer in the 5th floor conference room. I can give you the divorce agreement right now." Victoria's eyes widened in disbelief. She opened her mouth, but no words came out for a long time. Seeing this, Ethan's eyes darted around, and he quickly tried to mediate. "You two have been married for years. Sincere, don't say things you'll regret. Even though we made a small mistake this time, you'll still need to rely on Vicky's company in the future, right? How can you abandon Vicky at a time like this?" Chapter 8. Ethan's words seemed well-intentioned, but his attempt to stir up trouble was too obvious. Every sentence was a jab, belittling me, implying that I had nowhere to go without Victoria's company. In the past, they had brainwashed me in the same way, to keep me at the company, working myself to death for them. With my skills, many companies were eager to poach me. Victoria was too self-righteous. She had never truly known me. Victoria's face flushed with anger. "Sincere Clark, you once said you would do anything for me, but now you don't even show half the concern for me that Ethan does. In fact, I had already had my lawyer draft the divorce papers on my way here. I transferred the file, walked over to the printer and signed my name first. I handed the divorce agreement to Victoria, my expression neutral. "Perfect. Once you sign this, you can marry the man you've been dreaming of, Ethan Jones." Victoria clutched the papers in her hand as if they were a hot potato. It was only at this moment that she realized I wasn't joking. I pressed her. "Victoria Westwood, I hope you'll sign it and give it to me soon. If you deliberately delay, I'll have to have my lawyer contact you." Victoria was about to say something more, but the police officer maintaining order at the scene walked straight over. Without a word, he snapped a pair of rose-gold handcuffs on both Victoria and Ethan. He escorted them both to the station for questioning. Because Ethan had signed the liability contract and had boasted so extravagantly during the live broadcast, he inevitably had to bear the primary responsibility. In the end, Ethan was sentenced to 5 years in prison for the crime of destroying cultural relics. Although Victoria was released, the staggering $500 million compensation debt fell entirely on her. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. Not long after, I attended a business gala to help appraise some antiques. As soon as I entered the venue, I saw Victoria walking towards me. She had lost some weight but still carried herself with the same arrogant air. Talk about a small world. She was like a ghost I couldn't shake. I pretended not to see her, but to my surprise, Victoria walked right up to me and said provocatively, "Sincere Clark, long time no see. I bet you didn't expect this. I'm here to meet with Mr. Summers from a group to secure investment for my company. I'll be back on my feet in no time. And then I'll spend a little money to get Ethan out early." It seemed Victoria truly did love Ethan. Even at a time like this, she was still thinking about him, scheming how to get him out. But what a coincidence. The target investor she was talking about happened to be the very Mr. Summers who had hired me to appraise antiques for him. As we were speaking, Mr. Summers walked over to me, his tone friendly. "Sincere, sorry to keep you waiting. I got stuck in traffic. This antique in my possession is to be donated to the local museum. I'll need you to take a careful look at it." Seeing how polite Mr. Summers was to me, Victoria, not wanting to be outdone, forced her way into the conversation. "Oh, Mr. Summers, why didn't you say you needed an appraisal? My company has excellent appraisers too. We can do it for you for free. As long as you invest in us, Mr. Summers, we can handle all these things for you in the future." Mr. Summers let out a cold laugh and shot back. "Let you appraise it? So you can smash it with a hammer?" "Miss Westwood, everyone saw that live broadcast from the museum. The internet has a memory. You've already been blacklisted from the industry. What makes you think I would invest in you?" Mr. Summers's voice wasn't quiet. The commotion drew a crowd. As soon as people saw Victoria, they showed expressions of disgust and began to whisper. "Isn't that Victoria Westwood? The one who deliberately misidentified those artifacts and destroyed 3 of them a while back? How is she not in jail? The other one got arrested. She has to pay off the debt, so they let her out." "I see. How does a disgrace to the industry like her have the nerve to show up at a business event? She's an embarrassment to her peers." Victoria's face turned from red to white and back again, more dramatic than an opera mask change. Finally, unable to bear the humiliation, she covered her face and ran out of the venue. Mr. Summers said, "Well, Sincere, now that the irrelevant person is gone, shall we head to the VIP room?" I nodded and followed him. I patiently explained the appraisal process and unfortunately had to inform him that the antique he had was a fake. Mr. Summers nodded thoughtfully and proposed, "Sincere, your skills are truly outstanding. Why don't you come work for my company? I'm very grateful for your help this time." I smiled gently and declined his offer, telling him I had no plans to return to the business world anytime soon. Although Mr. Summers was disappointed, he saw that my mind was made up and didn't press the issue. When I walked out of the venue, I found that Victoria hadn't left. She was squatting by the entrance waiting for me. Chapter 9. When Victoria saw me, her expression was completely different from before. She softened her tone slightly and said, "Sincere Clark, please help me. If you come back to my company now, I promise the position of chief appraiser will be yours forever." I reminded her coldly, "Victoria Westwood, have you forgotten? We're already divorced. Give up on that idea. I'm not going to help you." With that, I turned and left without a backward glance. Unable to secure any investment, Victoria's company's expenses far exceeded its income, and employees left in droves. In less than a week, her company went bankrupt. During this time, I stayed home, working with Professor Peterson to restore the 3 artifacts damaged by Ethan Jones. After a painstaking effort, we finally succeeded in restoring them. This brought me great fame in the industry, and many antique appraisal companies extended offers to me. I refused them all. After donating all 3 artifacts to the local museum, I went back to see my professor and had a heart-to-heart talk with him. I felt it was time to think about my own future, to live for myself for once. I chose to return to teaching at the university, hoping to cultivate more talent for the industry. I wanted my students to know that in the world of antique appraisal, outstanding skills are far from enough. A strong moral character and a commitment to our original mission are equally important. We must protect the integrity of our profession. After half a month of peace, Victoria found me again. She must have been waiting for a long time because as soon as I left the university after work, she eagerly grabbed my hand. I was so startled by her appearance that I almost didn't recognize her. It hadn't been long since I last saw her, but the Victoria before me looked as if she had aged 10 years overnight. Weariness was etched into every part of her. If I had seen her like this in the past, my heart would have ached for her, but now I felt nothing. I just said flatly, "Victoria Westwood, if you're here to ask me to pay off your debt, you should give up now." Her eyes read. Victoria shook her head frantically. "No, Sincere, I'm not here to ask for your help. I truly know I was wrong. I've been thinking a lot these past few days, and I finally understand that you were the only one who was ever truly good to me. The person I love most has always been you. I was just too blind to see my own heart before. I'm begging you, please give me another chance." I sighed and coldly shook her hand off. It's too late, Victoria. No one waits around forever. I don't love you anymore. I've had my fill of disappointment. In an instant, Victoria burst into tears, apologizing profusely and insisting sincere, I won't give up. I'll prove my determination with my actions. You were always the one who was good to me. This time, it's my turn to put in the effort. I knew Victoria was stubborn. Once she set her mind on something, she wouldn't stop until she hit a wall. She began waiting for me outside the university every day. A woman who had never cooked in her life clumsily prepared 3 meals a day for me. She fussed over me constantly, but I ignored it all. What I never received in the past, I no longer cared for now. Victoria persisted for a month and finally gave up. She knew that when I made a decision, I never changed my mind. This time, I truly didn't want her anymore. She finally understood that she had lost her chance to win me back. One day, Victoria simply disappeared from my world. It wasn't until 3 months later that I saw the news on my phone. Crushed by debt, Victoria had gone to visit Ethan Jones in prison under the pretense of a visit. The two had an argument. The prison guards couldn't intervene in time. Ethan died at Victoria's hands, and in the end, Victoria took her own life. Seeing the news, I was calmer than I expected. The memories of her seemed so distant now. We had long since become strangers. I turned off my phone screen, picked up my books, and prepared to go to class. It was the rainy season, with storms that came and went in a flash. After the rain, the sky was still a pale blue-green. Pear blossoms from the trees next to the building fluttered to the ground. Students passing by greeted me politely, and I nodded back to each of them. Walking along this familiar campus path, I came face to face with the younger version of myself, the one who had once been filled with dreams.